Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. The sky, once a distant dream for so many Indians, has in less than a decade turned into an open highway of opportunity. Thanks to the regional connectivity scheme UDAN, launched back in October 2016, inspired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's simple yet powerful vision, Ude Desh ka Aam Nagrik, that even a common man in slippers should be able to afford air travel. From that first historic flight between Shimla and Delhi in April 2017 to now connecting over 90 airports and benefiting more than 1.5 crore passengers, UDAN has truly democratized the skies. It's linked small towns to big cities, boosted tourism and trade, and turned flying from a luxury into something within reach for millions of Indians. As the scheme enters its 9th year, we take a closer look at how UDAN has reshaped India's aviation map, bridging distances, empowering regions, and bringing the dream of flight closer to every citizen of this country. To take that conversation forward, we're joined by three distinguished guests. So let me begin the program by introducing them to you. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome on this edition of Perspective Dr. Vandana Singh, Chairperson, Federation of Aviation Industry in India. Dr. Singh, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by Mr. Swaminathan Subramanian, former Executive Director, Admin, AAI. Thank you, sir, for joining us on the program. Welcome to Sansad TV. And we're also delighted to welcome Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor, retired. He's a defense expert. Air Marshal, glad to have you with us on this telecast as well. So let's begin the program with you, Dr. Singh. 9 years on, how do you look at the journey of the UDAN scheme, especially in terms of enhancing the regional connectivity and changing, in many ways, transforming India's aviation ecosystem?
Thank you, Tina, for having me on your show, and good evening to the august audience over here. Firstly, I would like to say the scheme Ude Desh ka Aam Nagrik has taken off, took off very well 9 years back. It's completed 9 years today, as you rightfully just mentioned, today on 21st October. A lot has been done, and I would say a lot has to be done. So coming to what has been done, obviously, yes, the regional connectivity that was meant to be enhanced has been done. The number of operational airports, like you mentioned, went up from odd 40-something to 74 to 90 right now, but has to reach a number of 350 to 400 by 2047. Now, have we achieved that as yet? That has to happen. Therefore, good, this scheme has been extended. The number of operational airport, 90, but it should have been 157. So yes, I would say we are there, and yet we have to walk quite a bit more. Rather, we have to run to pick up the pace in the next 10 years as we head to be one of the largest economies in the world, the third largest, if I can say that. And in order to do that, just enabling 1.5 crore passengers that we have done is not enough. We have to go up to 4 to 5 crore. Yes, remote areas have been connected. Yes, 601 air routes, if I'm not wrong, have come up. Greenfield airports have come up. Regional airlines have come up, which was the intent of the UDAN scheme. That each and every, we say what, Hawaii Chappal to Hawaii Jahaz. But for Hawaii Chappal to Hawaii Jahaz, how many airlines have been there? That is the question. Of course, certain names have come in. We have Star Air, we have India One, we have Fly 91, we have some such names. But then what is the awareness of it? Right. Are people aware of it? So UDAN scheme is there, has taken off well, needs a booster shot, and we all have to put in all our efforts to make sure that there is growth of regional airlines, more come in, that we provide, we revisit the viability gap funding, what we call, when airlines have to go to remote areas, and look at the operational costs for that, sustainability, all of that. Having said that, yes, We have greenfield airports. We have tier 2, tier 3 cities being connected. But we have to start running now, Tina.
Absolutely. There are so many areas in which we need to turn the focus into make it more successful. But Mr. Subramaniam, as somebody who's also been associated with this scheme ever since its inception, and as Dr. Singh also pointed out, there have been questions about, or we can say some of the gaps on how to take it forward. But before we get you talking on that, talk to us about some of the significant milestones that you see over the last 9 years, and in context of the skepticism that we saw when the scheme was launched, especially about commercial viability. If you could also talk to us and our viewers about what has kept the scheme going, or what has been the most important factor that has helped it sustain over the last 9 years, especially in context of the commercial viability.
I was the master of ceremonies when this program was launched, and I literally saw the state governments throw so many questions about the viability and the sustainability of this entire scheme. They were very skeptical. That's a word that you use, and they indeed were. And I could see that. I still remember Mr. Chaubey, who was the secretary, had too many questions to answer at that point in time. But here is a scheme without this kind of an economic stimulus where you have a CIS where you charge 5,000, in tier 1, tier 2 routes, and then make use of that to cross-subsidize. And we have always been talking, in all third world countries, always cross-subsidize when it comes to development of airports and development of air routes. And that is exactly what we've been doing over this period of time. The viability gap funding, which has been reasonably well managed, although we can come to the introspection part and picking up SOGs and then making a run, as other panelists made a mention. But the huge takeaway is, if an airline is to carry passengers from point A to point B, you need airports. And I see a huge investment coming even from the state governments. There are many greenfield airports coming up. We see UP, they're talking about 6 new airports which are already functional, operational. There are more coming up. We see Orissa, where they have airports like Jaipur, which have come up and which have got connected. So the underserved and the unserved airports getting connected, trying to improve the infrastructure at these airports, trying to match the kind of resources with the type of aircraft that would operate at these airports. There is a lot of activity which are going on. And I think instead of trying to look short term, we've got to look at medium term and long term. And the Prime Minister's vision of having the Ude Desh ka Aam Nagrik, where he says Hawai Chappal to Hawai Jahaj, truly cannot captured in better essence than in the scheme of the RCS and the UDAN, which are under the Ministry of Civil Aviation's National Civil Aviation Policy 2016 scheme of things.
Even though it's a civil aviation, the Air Force has played a crucial role in especially supporting operations in the remote and the strategic areas. So for which I'll go across to Air Marshal Kapoor. Sir, if you could enlighten us and our viewers about the synergy between the civil and the military forces in actually making the operation successful, in making the UDAN scheme successful, especially in the border areas and the northeastern areas, which for so many years remained inaccessible. But now I think the northeastern part of the country has gained the most out of the UDAN scheme in terms of connectivity.
Good evening to you and the fellow panelists and to the viewers. I was with Mr. Chaubey at that stage. I was heading the operation in the Air Force when UDAN scheme began. And I recall that we had a lot of sessions at the Civil Aviation Secretary's office and at the Air Headquarters. Because when I retired, if I recall, about 50 Indian Air Force airfields today have civil flights landing. And this number initially began from 12 to 14, which may have gone beyond 50. That is the last figure I know. And we have carved out enclaves in our Air Force airfields from where the civil flights operate. The next question which you asked is of the remote areas. Now, typically the ALGs at which the Indian Air Force aeroplanes land, be it in Uttarakhand, be it in the east, be it Diglipur or Campbell Bay or Car Nicobar in the Highland Territories, or be it small airfields in Gujarat, Rajasthan, disused airfields, all were tried to be revived but like the doctor just mentioned, many of them could not begin operations. Now there are a lot of factors which through your program, and if the concerned people are watching, we need to look at broadly in 2 or 3 aspects. One is the platform. Now, for the small and austere airfields, we need to have aeroplanes which can operate. Typically, the ATR kinds of an aeroplane or the C295s, which are being now manufactured and assembled in India, or the Dornier class of aircraft, which just typically requires 2,000 to 3,000 feet of runway, are the best suited. So, do we have the platforms? One. Second, the most important aspect is, even if you create airports, even if you create infrastructure, where do you get the pilots to fly this? Right. Now, why I mean to say the pilots is because these airfields do not have typically any radio or nav aids. It does not have an ILS. It does not have a VOR. It does not have a PAPI or an approach or a glide path. It does not have the indications or the other amenities which a typical airfield requires. So you will need crew who are having expertise to land at these airfields without aids, to fly through the hills, to fly through the mountains, to fly through the forests, and put down these aeroplanes in austere airfields is the most challenging aspect, in my opinion. You will have to invest in a section of people who, if we have to grow further, whatever are the figures envisaged for us to grow, we will have to look at these aspects. That is my input.
I think that's the perfect example of how civil-military synergy has shaped the success of the UDAN scheme. Even though, Air Marshal, it's a scheme to transform regional connectivity, and it has done significantly well over the last 9 years. A lot needs to be done, as Dr. Singh pointed out. Before we get into that aspect, I would also like to understand from you how a regional connectivity scheme has also strengthened national integration, strategic accessibility for India, given our geography, given the adversaries that we have, given the security challenges that India continues to face. So how do you explain UDAN contributing to strengthening strategic accessibility in areas like Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, also Andaman and Nicobar Islands, not to forget the northeastern part of the country?
See, in my opinion, a person should be able to check in his baggage at Kargil and receive it at London. So this is the kind of connectivity we are looking at, the hub and spoke method in aviation, what we call. So we should have hubs around which, like spokes, we have these small airfields feeding into the main system. We have a long way to go for that. We have a lot of distance to cover, in my personal opinion, in these aspects. We are closer, but as a whole of a nation approach, we have to put. Now, the problem comes between the state and the center. A large number of states have a control over many of these airfields, especially the austere ones. The state policies and generally the state aviation verticals are not that well equipped or that well manned with people with expertise to drive the aviation to that level. So when the center asks for certain aspects, or say airport authority approaches them, the funding and thereafter following it up makes it. Next aspect comes the platforms. Now, typically these small airlines, which Dr. Singh mentioned, do not have the kind of, because a small airfield will have pebbles, a small airfields will have unpaved surface on the shoulders, which when a jet lands will ingest all these kinds of FODs, what we call in the Air Force, foreign object damage, which may damage the aircraft surface or the engines. So we need to put in a lot of work at these small airfields. We should have aprons, we should have proper markings, we should have, and most of the airfields in the hills have, surrounding hill features, which makes it primarily a visual kind of a flying, wherein the pilot, until he sights the runway, there is no way he can land. So many a times the flights don't go through because of bad weather, gusting winds, or other factors. So as a nation, we have to invest in infrastructure and have defining policies, in my opinion, if we have to grow from here. Yes, we have come a long way, and we have a long way to travel. That's my take.
I think you're right. This is where Dr. Singh also spoke about every stakeholder working together, because now we are up and running, but the vision is yet to be realized. Dr. Singh, we are seeing a lot of other expansion happening also in the area of civil airports, more and more civil airports being built. There are also airports being built as part of the PM Gati Shakti master plan. How do you see all of that contributing to the next phases of UDAN, say 2.0, 3.0. The first one was about making it accessible and affordable. But the next phases have to now take care of the other challenges and gaps that the other panelists have spoken about.
Thank you, Tina. If I can again say, there is, as I said, there is a lot of work to be done right now and at a very strong pace. So let's first just take the example of Northeast India. Look at it beyond what we call the chicken's neck. Yeah. So when we talk about hub and spoke model, what do we have right now? We have Guwahati, which is where the major concentration is. We have the rest of the Seven Sisters. Yeah. But do we have last mile connectivity? How good are we with rescue operations? How good are we with heliports? We have only come up with 10 new in this last 9 years as far as Northeast is concerned. How about more concentration on that site where actually the focus is needed right now? And for that, a lot of stuff has to go in. First of all, as rightfully said, we need subject experts. Last mile connectivity. When I talk about last mile connectivity, I'm talking about rail connectivity. I'm talking about road connectivity. I'm talking about freighters. I'm talking about cargo connectivity. And I'm saying that is it even possible at this point of time, as we revisit all of it and as we try to boost and put all our efforts in, that is it possible that a parcel from X point in India itself is able to reach right there at the corner of some remote place, let's say in Nagaland or some place in Meghalaya, within that stipulated time? The answer is no. So a lot of work has to be done from our end. The government is doing its best, but the best is not yet the best. And then talking about what all needs to be done, Tina, as I said, we need to look at viability gap funding. We need to see the fact, is Aam Aadmi actually able to afford to fly? Is he aware? Are there enough regional players? Are we bringing in healthy public-private investment? What is the kind of more greenfield or more environmental factors that we are looking at? What is the terrain we are looking at? What is the kind of equipment we are getting it? Where will an Airbus fit in? Where will a 737 or a small Boeing fit in? Where will other equipments fit in? So these are questions that have to be put on the map, and they need to be really brainstormed, worked at by subject experts and come up with something. At this point of time, we at FAII are working, really focusing on Northeast India. And we are working on 3 aspects because we have to go step by step. We are focusing on rescue operations, that at every 100 kilometers, there is a heliport, that there is last mile connectivity as much as we can provide, that we bring in best in class players to actually, who are demonstrating this across the world, that we can also replicate this in India. So we need to learn from best in class. So we focus step by step, 1, 2, 3, and we carry on. And I'm sure we'll reach to a phase that, yes, we'll be looked up as one of the biggest players in the world. Over to you, Tina.
Absolutely. You're right. Lots of suggestions there in terms of how we can take it forward and how the next phases of UDAN scheme can evolve. Mr. Subramanian, coming back to you on which are the areas you think we need to focus more on. The first phase was about connecting India one flight at a time. Now, the next phases have to evolve and build on some of the challenges, some of the lessons that we have learned over the last 9 years. The UDAN scheme is now in its 9th year. So, in order for the scheme to have a long-term viability, which are the areas you think need reforms? Is it the policy framework area? Is it more focus on the infrastructure area? Or is it going to be lots of factors wherein we need to turn our attention simultaneously to?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. So you were talking about civil-military cooperation. I mean, even prior to what happened here and the number of joint-use aerodromes, which, started being used by the civilian flights. I mean, the Air Force and the Indian Navy opened up a lot in terms of allowing that to happen. We had something called the flexible use of airspace in India, which was implemented in 2013. And I would say that a lot of civil-military cooperation in this country happened thereafter. We have a national high-level airspace policy body. There's a lot of things which are happening in terms of, trying to reduce the length of routes by giving direct routings, by having routes through the military airspaces when they are not being put to use by the military aircraft. So I'd like to mention that. And again, one other point that I would like to tell you is that we don't have to go too far to look at the military airports as far as the RCS UDAN is concerned. Hindon is a prime example. Right. You have RCS UDAN flights from even Hindon, which is very nice. The question here is, I'm not even much worried about the navigational aids or whether the pilots would fly VFR or IFR and so on and so forth. So that's a different debate altogether. So only the qualified people, because you have the ICAO personnel licensing, the standards and the recommended practices, that takes care of it. And as far as aerodrome licensing is concerned, the DGCA is playing a very pivotal role, and aerodrome licensing has really come of age in India. And both the Airports Authority of India and the DGCA are doing a good job on that. So unless an airport is fit for use, I don't think it gets to be used, because safety is of paramount importance. But the problem with this entire the RCS UDAN scheme that you would really look at the number of airlines and the air taxi operators which have shut down operations in the recent past. See, that is something of concern, because I told you that there are two airports which are required for passengers to go between point A to point B. And then Dr. Singh talked about the last mile connectivity and so on and so forth, and probably the multimodal transport. But then the serious issue you have is, do you have enough airline? Do you have the airline economic sustainability is a question. I think there is a lot of introspection which needs to take place there. We also we get to read a lot in the reports that Indigo and SpiceJet, and even SpiceJet perhaps is not doing all that well, but Indigo and SpiceJet have made better use of the UDAN scheme, because they tend to get the exclusivity rights to certain routes, and they have done a lot better than other small-time operators. So the whole idea is now to make a deep dive, take a closer look into the airline aspect, the viability of all these air taxi operators and small, aircraft operators, and then have a real pragmatic approach. There should be a control mechanism. I think they operated flights from, say, Chandigarh to Hisar, and perhaps it was not viable with the kind of expenditure which is incurred in terms of you having your fire personnel, your ATC personnel in Hisar, and so on and so forth. So you'll have to also look at the viability from that point of view. So I think a lot more is desirable in this area. And there is also one thing. The question is, we perhaps are yet to become mature in terms of predicting the demand. Right. And that is one of the fundamental problems we have. People are using trial and error method more than they are trying to have, and even the bigger players who predict, I have my own doubts how good they are in terms of making very realistic predictions. So this is one area of concern to me, but I think somebody who's into the airline market who can probably throw more light on that. I am an ATM expert, so I should restrict myself up to this particular point, unless you have anything else to ask of me. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Subramanian. Now, before we wrap up the conversation, I'll go across to Air Marshal. And since we're talking about how to evolve from where we have reached, 9 years, we've seen significant milestones. But as all of you have rightly mentioned, there is a lot of untapped potential in terms of infrastructure, in terms of access, last mile connectivity, also in terms of emerging technologies, how to put technology to use as well. So these are aspects which perhaps the next phases of UDAN will evolve and explore in the months to come, in the years to come. But something that Mr. Subramanian spoke about, the civil-military cooperation that I discussed with you, Air Marshal, earlier on as well, in order for it to have a long-term viability. You are someone who's seen it or seen the Indian skies from both a development perspective, but also from a defense perspective. For us to take India's aviation into more better territory and something which we say see more and more growth, something that we have already envisioned. How do you see this collaboration also evolving rapidly?
See, I hold a ATPL, a current civil airline transport P1 endorsed today also. I chose not to join any airline. I chose, and I was in the advisory role to DGCA and Airport Authority for many years. I attended a lot of meetings. In my appreciation, the weakest link is the state governments. The state governments have a very active role to play. Like Dr. Singh mentioned, Along, Tooting, Zero, all these airfields, Diglipur, I've been to all these places. Now, there is no crash tender there. The state government is not able to, the land is encroached. The terminal building is not coming up. There are no place where the aircraft can park and turn around. So the state government says we will develop it. The center keeps writing to them that, we want to start operations from there. Second, the most important aspect which everybody is overlooking and which I've been harping for many years now, that where do we get the pilots to fly these routes? Mm-hmm. See, a pilot, a typical pilot, a civil pilot who has done a license is not used to this kind of flying to land at a strip of 2,000-3,000 feet. Right. He is not landing or flying without any aid. You need people, to put it other way, there is no helicopter academy in our country. There is absolutely zero civil helicopter flying academy in this country. Right. Most of the pilots, helicopter pilots, which this country has, are ex-military pilots. So we will have to tap into this resource of defense pilots to augment your UDAN scheme. And this I have been telling for many. A moment a person leaves the flying, he has been flying this route in and out, day in and out. He's been landing in Kargil, Leh, Thois, Zero, Along, Tooting, Diglipur, Campbell Bay, in and out, helicopters. These are the people who will fly, and of course, we need machines. For that, the airlines are not willing to put the money on the table, because this is not a thing which is very glamorous. This is a thing which does not give them enough, revenue to say, even if the government is willing to subsidize the tickets. The airlines are reluctant to invest in a 20-seater, 30-seater, 40-seater, 60-seater aeroplanes, because the infrastructure required to support and maintain vis-a-vis the cost-benefit analysis are some factors which will have to be taken into account. And in my opinion, a top-down approach wherein it is driven from the Aviation Ministry with the people from this thing, and when the chief ministers of all the states come, this has to be thrust with the fact finding that so many airfields today are behind schedule, and a timeline has to be set for them to go, and the airlines have to be told that by so and so date you will have to procure these money, and the policy should come of direct absorption.
Absolutely. I think that's a remarkable suggestion. I'm sure this must have been discussed as the new phases of the UDAN scheme evolves, because for a country like India, it's important for the government and the private players to understand you need to devise a pathway which balances commercial viability with socio-economic and development models. That is what is going to take us forward, and progress which is going to be inclusive is something which will become the hallmark of a country like us, and especially which has set itself a target of becoming a developed country, a Viksit Bharat by 2047, for which all of these aspects, all of these suggestions will have to be taken into account. Thank you once again to all my guests for joining us with your views, your suggestions based on your experience, and we hope that the next generation of policymakers would be listening to all of these suggestions and would work on those before the next phases of the UDAN scheme are implemented. Thank you once again for joining us on the program today. Wonderful having you all on this edition of Perspective. To you viewers, thank you very much to you as well for your time.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.